Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Faith the Pharmacist. For those of you who are new here, to all my returning subscribers, hi. How are you guys doing? How are you living? How's everything? Hope you're good. So this year we're going to be learning from each other's mistakes. Amen. Amen. I'm bringing you the very first of my series, Ethical Dilemmas, and I'm bringing you a story of mine just to set the table, just to let you guys have an ease into what this is all about. So I'm titling this series Ethical Dilemmas because it is what it is, ethical dilemmas. And I'm giving you one ethical dilemma in my list of ethical dilemmas, personal ones that has stuck out to me and literally almost claimed my career. This dilemma was crazy. It literally hit me. It was like a rude awakening when I needed it, and it was how a man died and I made an error. A man died, I made an error. So if you want to know how this happened, and if you want to know how it ended, the whole story, the whole 9 yards, the whole shebang, stay tuned and keep watching this video. And if you are still here by this point, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and keep coming back to my channel. If you've got any ethical dilemmas that you've either already faced or you're currently facing and you would like us to shed some light on what other ways that you can approach it, because as you all know, or you should hopefully know, as pharmacists or newly qualified pharmacy students, if you're being taught right now, with ethical dilemmas, a lot of the time there's no one right answer. So I'm going to be telling you the story of this ethical dilemma, how I handled it, how it ended, what happened, all the tea, and what I learned from it, and if I were to be in that position again, what would I do differently? So let's set the story. Starts when I was in my pharmacy job that was very hectic. So I was in this job where I was doing a lot more than I was typically used to doing. I didn't have a lot of support. I didn't have a lot of people helping me out. My team was quite skeleton, and we had some members of my team who weren't fully trained up to do the job that they were supposed to be doing. So basically, just understand that in this job, I was almost always alone with maybe another one of my team members who stuck by me so closely, bless her, or two others. It was crazy. This job, literally, I think this was the incident that made me leave that job in the end. This incident was the straw that broke the camel's back. So on this beautiful day, I went into work. I'd been working, I believe, at least 3 days that week, a minimum of 10 to 11 hour shifts, because I was meant to start work at 9 o'clock and finish at 7, but a lot of the time I'd get to work between 8 and 8:15 and finish work at 7, or sometimes 7:15, 7:30. Just bear with me, we're going to get there, we're going to get somewhere. On this fateful day, I was literally working through burnout. I was burnt all the way out. I was the only pharmacist dealing with clinics. There was just lots of services going on, and I had lots of prescriptions to check. I had lots of other bits to do on the back end. I had computer work to do. I had paperwork. I had so many things were bugging my brain down in this pharmacy. And that fateful day, I received a prescription for Oxynorm. Oxynorm is a controlled drug, and it exists in different concentrations. So this prescription I received was for Oxynorm, 1 milligram in 1 ml. And usually for controlled drugs, the keys would be kept on the pharmacist. So the dispenser would have to come and ask for the key. Some pharmacists are really anal that they don't give the keys to the dispenser. Instead, they will go and get the item out of the pharmacy, out of the controlled drug cabinet by themselves. So on this day, we received this prescription. My dispenser took the keys off of me, dispensed the item, my dispenser dispensed 1 milligram in 1 ml. So I was checking it and my brain was all sorts of scrunched up at this point that I was looking at. I stared at the box for so long and still did not understand what was going on. So I said to her, this is wrong. And I personally went back into the control drug cabinet and picked up the higher strength Oxynorm. I mean, that doesn't get prescribed regularly. I don't even know how this happened. And guys, I'm being very vulnerable right now because this is not one of my finest moments. It's not something I'm proud of. It's not something that I typically like to relieve, but for me to move past things, I actually have to relieve them over and over again, pick out my lessons from it and ensure that it doesn't happen again. So yeah, so this patient's prescription got filled with Oxynorm 10 milligrams in 5 ml. So this is 10 times the concentration of oxycodone that this patient should have. And if we're familiar with controlled drugs, we know that oxycodone is really potent, and having 10 times the strength might be okay for some people, but for some others it might not be. And that's what I didn't know. And I wasn't even aware that I'd picked up the wrong strength. So we got this thing dispensed, handed over to the patient, and the patient left the premises. For some reason, like, I just was not okay. I just knew that something was wrong. I just didn't feel quite right. So I just kept thinking back, like, okay, so what's happened? I'm not sure. So I went and I checked the prescription again. And then I started rethinking. I was like, did I give the right strength? I wasn't sure, so I googled the 2 strengths and I saw that the color that was flashing in my head as what I gave out was wrong, because I was now checking with a clear head. I had a break and I was checking the prescription again and I noticed that I'd given the wrong strength. I'd given the patient 10 times the strength that I should have given. So there's me frantically trying to find out the patient's contact number. We didn't have any on our system. And this is one thing. If you're a pharmacist, make sure your team members collect patients' contact numbers, because you never know when you would need it. Okay, so frantically trying to find out this patient's contact number, I ended up having to call their surgery. They don't usually want to give out contact information. So what I did eventually was to go on the summary care record. I didn't click into the patient's summary care record because initially you can see a summary of like some just contact information and patient's demographic. So I found the number to reach them on and I was happy. I rang immediately. This was literally within about an hour of me handing out that item. I phoned immediately and the patient wasn't answering. It was going straight to voicemail. I tried another number I saw there, which was a landline, and the lady answered it and I asked for the patient and she said he doesn't stay here. And I'm like, does anyone know this patient around here? And they were like, oh yeah, I think his son. So I ended up speaking to his son, who said, oh no, it's okay. So I asked him, can you bring this item back into the pharmacy so I can change it, please? Because I've dispensed the wrong strength accidentally. I apologized and I explained that I'm really working under a lot of pressure and I think I might need to report this, because typically as a pharmacist, if you make an error, you have to report it. Not necessarily for naming and shaming, but just, you know, to help you reflect on that error and also try and prevent an error like that happening in future. If there's anything in the processes or in your processes that caused that error to happen, reflect and make a change, right? So I said to them, I'm really sorry, I apologize, I gave the wrong strength of this medication. Can you please give it back? I first asked if the patient has had any and they said no. And I was like, phew, okay. And then I was like, can you please bring it back into the premises so I can change it for the right one? I apologize and I let them know that I will be reporting this to the appropriate bodies, which will probably be the accountable officer, the CD accountable officer, my area manager, and also writing a reflexive summary of it. Now, error log. The patient's son insisted that they couldn't bring it back because they were too far away and they were happy to change the dose to match the strength. I tried to insist that they brought it back, but they refused. So I told them, okay, in that case, I'm going to give you the new dose so that you can have the right strength, right? So let's say with the strength of 1 milligram in 1 ml, the doctor's asking them to take 10 mils a day, right? 10 mils once a day. I would be asking them now on this strength of 10 milligrams in 1 ml to take 1 meal a day just so they have the right strength, and they'll have to do this using a syringe. So I explained the new dose to the son, and he said fine, he's happy to write that down and make sure his dad gets the right dose. And I'm like, thank you very much. I reported as appropriate. So this patient then receives another prescription from us. About a couple of days after that Oxynon prescription came, we filled out this prescription and I took note of it. So about a week after that, I still went to go and look, and this patient still had not picked up their prescription. And here I am thinking, okay, I hope nothing's gone wrong. I called to follow up what's happened and just re-apologize and explain to them that I have now reported the error. I spoke to the son, who then tells me his dad is in the hospital, but he can't speak about it right now. And I'm thinking, oh, what's happened here? So I tried the other mobile number that I had earlier, and thankfully someone picks up. It turns out to be my actual patient, and bless him, was a poor old man. Picked up, and he was actually in good spirits, and I said to him, hello, I am so this has happened, and I just wanted to phone to see that you were okay. And he says, yeah, I'm fine, I'm just in the hospital, I got admitted for opioid overdose. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, holy moly, what have I done? I was sweating, I was devastated, I was literally stressed by this situation. And the patient says apparently I'd been given 10 times the strength of my opioid, and now I'm admitted for an overdose, but they're treating me and I'm okay, so it's not a problem. And I had to apologize again, and I explained to him who I was, and he was very okay, strangely enough. And I was like, why is this person not mad at me? Like, it's partly my fault. To a large extent, it is my fault for not making sure that I got the checking of that prescription correct. So that call ended, so I thought, okay, at least he's being looked after, right? I'm just going to follow up my reporting as well as follow up the patient every so often. So I phone again a few days later, and the patient says he's fine, he's recovering. And I'm like, okay, I'm really sorry once again, sir. The third time I phoned, no one answers this phone. I tried everything. I phoned the son, no one was answering. I was getting stressed, and weeks were passing. I think at least 2 weeks had passed since the first phone call where I found out the patient was in hospital. And I thought to myself, no, I have to do something else about this. So I started trying to see who was best to phone. I liaised with my manager, and I was advised to phone the patient's GP just to, report the error to them as well. All of this was stressing me out, but my main focus was, I hope this patient is fine. I really don't care about myself right now because a lot is going on behind the scenes, but I just want to make sure this patient is fine, and then I can sort myself out. So I phoned the patient's doctor, and I told them about what happened, and the doctor then says to me, oh, don't you worry, that the patient actually was end stage. He was an end stage cancer patient, so he had cancer that had metastasized and spread to all over his body. So it was literally palliative at this point. So he was going to die eventually. Now they don't know if the opioid overdose affected his or sped up his death. They don't know, but apparently the patient died a peaceful death, and I had nothing to worry about. So though this happened and it turned out that I didn't really have much to worry about, this really gave me a lot to think about. And I think this was the straw. This was the part where I decided to hand in my notice at this job, because I had to sit down and reflect. How did I get to this point where I'm making errors with controlled drugs that could have had a worse outcome? Thankfully, I feel like this was just God trying to shake me out of my just misery in that job and let me know that something's not right here and I need to leave before something really bad happens. And I'm so grateful that I took that hint and I left. Now let's roll back to the whole process, how everything happened, how we got here in the first place, right? So first things first, Checking a control drug has to be done when you feel competent to do it. That's one thing I would never ever do again. If I feel under pressure, I would not check a control drug. You can't even get me to do it. I would not, because boy, if the situation turned out differently, I would literally be in a completely different position right now. And I'm just trying to be as vulnerable as possible so that people out there, pharmacists, aspiring pharmacists, can all be reminded that we're only human. Errors happen. Doctors make errors. We make errors. Things happen. But the main thing is that we learn from our errors and we put steps in place to mitigate these errors from happening again in future. So, first things first, I would not check a controlled drug in any environment that feels tense. When I feel unsettled, if I feel like my headspace is not clear enough to be checking that controlled drug, I'll rather leave it till later or ask them to go to another pharmacy. Because right in the middle of checking that medication that day, I was so close to asking them to go to another pharmacy because I felt like my head wasn't quite there. But for some reason, I just plodded on. So that's one. The second thing I would have done, instead of expecting the son or the father or whoever to bring the medication back into the pharmacy for me to amend, I would have taken myself out of my job, taken a break, even if it's half an hour, drove to the patient's house, picked up the wrong medication and taken them the right medication, just to make sure that no slips, no trips, nothing of that sort happens, because I took a chance. And I feel like it was because I was also stressed and under a lot of pressure. I just couldn't get myself to think that I would drive all the way to a patient's house to pick up a medication, but the situation warranted it and I should have done it. So that's another thing. Now the third thing I learned in that situation is that it's crazy, but if you're in a job and you're screaming for help and you're not getting any help, save yourself. And I'm glad I did, because that error literally has stuck with me till this very moment, and I would never ever allow myself to be put under such immense pressure ever again. I would learn to open my mouth and say no to the things that I can't do, and speak up more and more, or even take myself out of a toxic situation. I hope you've learned one or two things from this. If you have any ethical dilemmas, like I said earlier, please send them to my email and we will dissect them here for you. The thing with ethical dilemmas, again, is that there's no right or wrong answer. The main thing is that no one dies in the process, right? And that everyone is safe and a-okay. Thank you guys so much for stopping by my channel. Before I click out of this video, I just want to remind you that I started my pharmacist coaching services. So if you know, or if you are someone who is less than satisfied with their pharmacy careers, you can't seem to find joy in this career that you once loved, and you want to navigate your way back out of this rut that you found yourself in, send me an email and I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye.